Coming up, the Melbourne Storm gets swept away by a Sharknado. St. Helens pull off a magic miracle at Newcastle. And who takes out the decider in Game 3 of State of Origin? Yes, hello, and welcome back to the Sideline Chat podcast, the one-stop shop for rugby league. Still Connor Marcellus with you, who Mark Henry was intending to join us, but unfortunately he got into a disagreement with a producer who called the Broncos cheating bastards, so he's been suspended for a further week. Yes, apparently the producer, who was a Broncos fan, did not like the insinuation that his team were cheating bastards, so he practically slapped him harder than Chris Rock and gave him another week suspension on top of that. I don't control the producers, they control me, so nevertheless, it is our Game 3 of Origin debrief, and we will get straight into the Origin tour of Queensland versus New South Wales, and oh boy, have there been some late spanners thrown into the works right here. So, from the sides that were announced at the end of last weekend, Jacob Saifiti will start in the front row with Jordan McLean ruled out through injury, Junior Paulo on the bench, and Dale Finucane late minute reserve, but nevertheless will be retained probably 1 hour before kickoff. As for Queensland, well, haven't they had to go through some changes? It has been confirmed that Tom Dearden will start at 5'8" in the place of Cameron Munster, whilst Corey Oates, about time, has been recalled into the side by Billy Slade. Either Jeremiah Nanai to start with no Felice Kafusi, and Tom Gilbert to make his first Origin debut for Billy Slater's side. Now, we all know what happened to Queensland at Optus Stadium in Game 2, where they absolutely got embarrassed in the final half an hour by the Blues. Nathan Cleary put on an absolute clinic, if you remember back to our fallout from Origin 2 in the week after. Decider time. Now, this is always where it gets nervous, to say the least. Everything is on the line, and even Mark admits we are in for an absolute thriller. But I am always a bit cautious with these Suncorp Stadium deciders. Of course, we had 2017 and 2020 with the series in the balance going to Suncorp Stadium. And of course, Queensland won on both of those occasions. One being Cameron Munster's debut for Queensland. And then, of course, the worst Queensland Origin side in 40 years, and they won. Good times going up against the worst ever Origin side for Queensland, and they still came out on top. And I'm still expecting Queensland to throw everything at us right here. But it is not impossible. Nathan Cleary playing absolute outstanding football, not just for the Blues, but for the Penrith Panthers. And if anyone could pull it off, I reckon Brad Fittler could be the first coach in 17 long years to win an Origin decider at Suncorp Stadium, and Cleary to be the first halfback since Andrew Johns to do just that. We're going to be in for a show tonight. As I've said, Mark has already nailed down his predictions. The Blues to win it by 8, so he's calling it a 7-12 victory. I am nervous because I know what Queensland are capable of, and it's just another example of them getting up over a much more fancy Blues outfit. But I reckon this time we can do this. Let's finally win a decider at Suncorp Stadium. But how do we do that? Well, first of all, we got to win the game through the middle of the field. Of course, Jeremiah Nanai starting means the dynamic is bomb it to Namai and outjump Luai, Burton, and Brian Toto. That'll be Queensland's main objective there. And the mind games. We got to be ready for whichever way Billy Slater wants to play it. Hunt at 5'8" or Dearden at 5'8". We got to be ready for that one too. But I reckon New South Wales can clinch the series for the fourth time in 5 years. But I reckon it's going to be a lot closer than what everyone thinks. I reckon it'll come down to a field goal struck by Nathan Cleary. And I reckon not only is he man of the match, here's my bold prediction. I reckon Nathan Cleary will be the Wally Lewis medalist for player of the series. There you go. My cards are on the table. I'm going to say New South Wales 1-6 and to clean up State of Origin 2022. Now, from State of Origin, we go back into Clubland for round 18 of the NRL. And of course, it will depend on how players back up afterward. As it is always the case right there. Only one change for the Sharks. Said Britton Decora accepting a one-match ban for a dangerous tackle. So Teague Wilton will come into the second row in his place. Meantime, they are buoyed by both the returns of Nico Hines and Toby Rudolph after being ruled out due to COVID. So Brayton Trindle drops back to the reserves and Brayton Hamlin-Uele returns to the bench as well. Meantime, for the Cowboys, they have chosen to rest both Valentine Holmes and Tom Dearden will be expected to back up, as well as Tom Gilbert. Valentine Holmes and Jeremiah Nanai will be rested. So, a couple of changes on that front. Brendan Elliott will come in to start on the left hand and wing, and Kaneli Lemuelu will get a start in the second row with Ben Hampton pushed to the bench right there for Todd Payton's side. Now, the Cowboys had the bye and have moved up in the second, but the Sharks, wow, 28 points to 6, downing the Melbourne Storm at Shark Park. How do they manage to do this, I wonder? This what Gus Gould describes as the Bermuda Triangle of rugby league. Informed sides go down to PointsBet Stadium and walk away badly beaten or narrowly beaten, and depending who you ask. Well, I mentioned Manly last time out in round 16. They pulled the Storm's right edge apart because of the inexperience of Marion Seve and Grant Anderson. Well, the Sharks did the exact same playbook early on in a 4-try blitz to start out of round 17 with the split it by rounds. But they turned it back on the inside, going at Jerome Hughes. So they really pulled them apart there with the try to Blake Brayley, ultimate example of that. But the left edge just got opened up. Jesse Ramian having an absolute ball, and he was one of my 2 stand-up performers for the Sharks right there. First with Ramian, 3 tries, 1 try assist, 137 running meters, 8 tackle breaks, and 3 line breaks. And then, of course, Matt Moylan off the back of his recent 2-year contract extension, taking him to the end of 2024 in Cronulla, 76 run meters, 2 try assists, 2 line breaks, and further things were compounded for Melbourne. Brandon Smith sent to the sin bin for calling the referee a cheating bastard. Wow. I have never seen that happen with the Melbourne Storm whatsoever. I am dumbfounded, to be quite fair. The most professional rugby league outfit amongst the best 4 in the world, I would say Melbourne, Penrith, St. Helens, and the Wigan Warriors are the best 4 or professional rugby league outfits currently either side of the world. But for this one in particular, a genuine shot at the minor premiership, it's now starting to fall off. This is the second time this season Melbourne have copped back-to-back losses. And this one was a lot bad. All 3 well, really, it's stretched to 4 losses to this point. But 2 of the last 3 have been absolutely terrible. I don't know if they can dig themselves out of the hole to stay in the minor premiership race at the moment. But if I'm Craig Bellamy, I'm scratching my head at how badly we played. Because this power game where the Sharks just dominated through the middle and then opened up both sides of the field, where we have 5 tries running against us. That's just not good enough. It's far from good enough. And the Sharks, well, they get another one up over the Melbourne Storm and a real big win. Defence let them down right at the very end, had the opportunity to keep Melbourne tryless and scoreless on the board for the whole affair, but they just couldn't hold them out forever, and eventually Melbourne were able to crack Ash over at the very depth within the final 10 minutes, which not ideal, but I think it just takes the gloss off what was really a dominant performance by Cronulla and really sends warning bells ringing about the Sharks coming back as a premiership contender. Now going into this game, of course, defense I mentioned, and with the Sharks, the Cowboys will be well rested, but I've got a lot of questions with the sharp 2-day turnaround to be playing 2 games in 2 days, particularly with Tom Dearden Tom Dearden in particular. He's going into an Origin decider on debut, and he's going to be backing up in another crucial top 4 clash. Is it too much from Todd Payten? Now, he's chosen to rest Valentine Holmes. Why isn't he resting Dearden? He would need all the support he can get. Now, it's true, he's got Slater, Thurston, Smith in the QRL coaching system for the Maroons. But if he doesn't perform well, how is he expected to go back to clubland and match it with the Sharks, who will, barring Siosifa Talakai, who's still ill in the reserves, but could be a late caller, depending how well he backs up. He might only play about 10 minutes, so he might as well back up. This is not going to go the way people think it's going to go. It's going to be a cracking match. Don't get me wrong. This will be a blockbuster match between these two sides. We've had some interesting finals highlights between the two of them over the course of the last 10 years, to say the least. As for Mark, his comments reading, cracking match coming up with both sides in fine form, but he thinks the Cowboys will get the edge by 6 points. So he's going to call it a Cowboys 1-6 win in there. I'm going to go swing the other way. I think the Cowboys will have enjoyed the Origin breather, sitting comfortably in second, but after the Sharks destroyed the Storm, I'm going to stand up and take Cronulla seriously at this point in time. And remember, if you remember back to my 2022 previews for the NRL, all the way back in February, I said the Sharks would finish bottom 4. Here they are, in the top 4, a chance, maybe not, but a home qualifier final on the line. But they are a realistic chance. I'd probably think they're pretty close. I'm going to say the Sharks win this off the back of that confidence booster against Melbourne. And I think they win this 7-12. Now, moving on to the other Friday night game. The Parramatta Eels playing host to the New Zealand Warriors at the CommBank Stadium in Sydney. More Parramatta, or accurately, a couple of changes for Stacey Jones' side. Of course, losing Ronald Volkman and sidelined due to a virus, not specified which virus right here, while also missing Bailey Sirenen and Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. So Chanel Harris-Tabita will start at 5'8", alongside Sean Johnson. Ed Kosi comes into the side on the wing. Whatever it's the right or the left, it remains to be seen at this point. And with no Bailey Sirenen, Jack Murchie looks like he's been added to the bench as well. As for the Eels, only one change. Of course, Junior Paulo has been named to back up after Origin. So Marata Niokore will shift to lock forward, with Makahisi Makatoa going to the bench. And practically a rough gig for Nathan Brown, being pushed back to the reserves after running for 99 meters against the West Tigers, who they narrowly pulled off an escape against, 28 points to 20. Well, how did this result pan out exactly? Of course, the Tigers looking for a scalp at Leichhardt Oval. The Eels, not a good winning record at Leichhardt Oval. But I tell you what, the results can just turn on its head just like that. The Tigers were in complete control. Soft goal line defense allowed New Brown to score a try early. And then the Tigers just kicked on from that point up until, and this is pretty much a big play in the game right here, debutant Justin Matamua going to the sin bin 5 minutes into his first grade debut and literally turning the tide right there. Gutherson had his pants pulled down by Dane Laurie on the second attempt, but after that, it was practically all Parramatta from that point going forward. First, with the try of Regan Campbell-Gillard, overlooked by Freddie for State of Origin 3, whether there's a sort of Penrith Parramatta conspiracy going on right here, or it's, as Freddie said, he just wanted players that suited the way they played. Don't know where he has to leave Campbell-Gillard out of the equation, but nevertheless, Campbell-Gillard kickstarted the Eels' resurgence after going down 10 points early on. One try, 100 running meters, one tackle break and one offload, and because I'm exercising editorial powers, I've picked the second one. And this is what really put the Eels on the front foot going into the second half. Micah Sevo. You can't keep this bloke away from a try line, even if your name was James Tedesco. But you probably have to call an ambulance and maybe a priest after that one. One try assist, 110 running meters, 7 tackle breaks, and 2 line breaks. Turning the game on its head. Now, David Norfoluma gave the Tigers a bit of a sniff with 10 minutes to go with a quick-fire double. I still reckon one of those tries he scored, and I believe it was the second try with 5 minutes to go, was a knock-on. I genuinely think there was a knock-on in that play, in that grounding. No one picked up on it. Now, they didn't show extensive replays like they usually would, but you have to take a serious look at that. Hell of a serious look at that. But momentum killed the West Tigers right here. And they just didn't recover. From 12-0 up to 16-12 down at half-time to 28-20 by full-time. A complete collapse from Brett Comorley's side. And he has to be frustrated over that. As for Brad Arthur, I think he would have been pleased by the response after what seemed like a winnable game against the Rabbitohs. As for the Warriors, they too had a bye over the weekend, and really no origin stars of concern. And of course, Reece Walsh. Also, a lot of big stories involving the Warriors, I'd have to say. Of course, Reece Walsh returning to the Brisbane Broncos in 2023. After personal life change circumstances, that of course is locked in. And then the appointment of Andrew Webster as the new head coach from 2023 as well. So the Warriors, 3 big news stories for them over the course of the last month of the bid. Their return home to New Zealand, the departure of Reece Walsh, and the appointment of Andrew Webster. Interesting, they cite Andrew Webster as being the architect of the Penrith Panthers' attack. That's rather funny, because I thought it was Trent Barrett running the attack as well. I suppose as Webster took over from Barrett after he left, and got them to the premiership. And it's also true, Webster's now got quite a fair few of handy signatures up his sleeve, even from the likes of Ronald Volkman, Mitch Barnett, Dylan Walker, Emirata Niokore, some handy forwards and backs. The question is, can he put it together off of Nathan Brown's side? And the other question is, why did the Warriors only allow Walsh to negotiate with the Broncos when the Dolphins were on the table as well? A lot of interesting questions about that, but I think that is a discussion for another day when we have 2 men that aren't going to get in trouble with the producers every now and again. Now, back to this game. Of course, Jake Arthur also on the interchange as well. Oh, of course, Parramatta fans will be left scratching their heads at that one. There's only one way this is going to go. Even with the Warriors, there is only one way this will play out. Right here, you're coming to CommBank. The Eels are at home. Probably a healthy Friday night crowd. Maybe at least 20,000 rock up. Maybe a little bit more. Or a no-brainer, as Mark would say. But the Eels are way better than Warriors. He's saying they win by 24 at 13 plus to the Parramatta Eels. I think if the Eels can contend with the final 20 minutes, because those are the real premiership minutes right there, they can't afford to have another slip-up against a Tigers or a Bulldogs, or even a Warriors that might come out with nothing to play for and put on an absolute display of courage and New Zealand attacking flair. But I still think the Eels will be too strong for this one, and I think they will win 13 plus. Now, moving on, we have got the first of the Saturday games back at Gosford, with the Sydney Roosters playing host to the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Of course, Ben Hunt will be monitored ahead of the clash. He has been aimed to start, but of course was to be monitored as you would expect. Jaden Sullivan pushed back to the reserve, as of course with no Michaeli Ravalawa for the rest of the season, depending if the Dragons can make the finals, is out with a hamstring. So Tautau Moga will start on the right wing. Jack DeBellin will go to lock forward in play. Ace of Tarek Sims with Frank Molo starting up front and Aaron Woods, the new man on the bench. As for the Roosters, a couple of ins and outs. Still no sign of Luke Keary, despite the word he has been training with the squad full-time once more. Matt Lodge included in the reserves, as well as Jared Waria-Hargreaves being named on the bench. Manu and Walker continuing in the halves, with Paul Momorowski maintaining his place in the centres. And I think that's most of the changes. Of course, Tedesco, Crichton, and Lindsay Collins, all to be monitored, as well as Daniel Tupou, throughout the course of Origin 3, of course. But heading into the weekend, at least 4-day turnaround, it would be interesting to see if they do back up. The Dragons. Yes, St. George Illawarra going down to the Brisbane Broncos, 32 points to 8. That start from St. George Illawarra, that was just like, where did he come from? Of course, I am referring to Cody Ramsey's first try, brilliantly disguised behind Jack Bird. And there was just, the defense just fell for it. They genuinely fell for it. I couldn't believe it when he was able just to slice through, no trouble whatsoever. I'll take a 4-point order right here if you don't mind. It was just absolutely crazy. And of course, Moses Suli getting a raw or power try over his opposite number in Katoni Staggs. It's just, you can't stop the man. A true specimen of a rugby league player, if ever there was one. And really, one of the Dragons' buys of the season. I got to say, he has been in a stand-up performance for the Dragons this year. But the moments that changed everything. Tarek Sims getting sin-binned not once, but twice. And the Broncos made him pay for it. Right. Unbelievable how that happened. First up try to Deloise Hoyter. Now, of course, they reckon there was a double movement in that. I didn't see any double movement. Momentum carried him into the goal line. Why would the referee and the bunker both think it was a try if there was double movement in that? But Tarek Sims' sin binnings really turned the momentum in Brisbane's favour. As from the second sin binning, the Broncos ran in 2 tries within the space of him going and then coming back. And they kicked on in the second half with a further 3 tries, including A brilliant execution down the right-hand side to the man of the... Well, I reckon he was the man of the match in Katoni Staggs. 2 tries, 136 running meters, 5 tackle breaks, 3 line breaks, and 1 off low. The second try coming courtesy of Jordan Pereira's kick back in field and a spectacular dive to really kick the Broncos to the lead. But the Dragons, they just fell off and they couldn't handle what Brisbane were putting up. That's just the plain truth of the matter. After 2 good back-to-back performances, a grind against the Raiders and an absolute demolition job over the Rabbitohs, many thought St. George Illawarra were on the uptick. And now they've just crashed back to earth in what I and probably some fans would regard as a spectacular crash back to reality. Now, as for the Roosters, they've had 1 week to get over their narrow loss to the Penrith Panthers, persisting with Manu at 5'8" and Walker at halfback. Of course, I reckon Walker should have been at halfback from the word go. Oh, but he's definitely re-earned his place as the Roosters' number 7. Jared Warrior-Hargraves coming back into the side. That's a big boost. They have missed him during the time he has been ruled out. It seemed like ages he's been gone. But he's back nevertheless, and I think the big dog back in the pack is going to ruffle some feathers right here. Now, it was a crazy game, as Marcus said, but he acknowledges the Broncos did show how well they have played this year and that they can give the heavyweight sides a real run. And in the end, it was just too classy from them, even without 8 Origin stars available, including those ruled out through injury. Now, interesting statistic that has emerged between the Dragons and the Roosters since the 2010 Grand Final. In the 12 years since they've met, after the Grand Final, all the times that the Dragons have won against the Roosters, all of those, or the majority of those, have come on Anzac Day. Rather interesting, to say the least. But that's not where it stops. Because the majority of the time that the Roosters have won have always been the non-Anzac Day clashes. That means the second meeting, if it is not on Anzac Day, the Roosters have been the one on the get-up, and convincingly too. It's just unbelievable. The absolute clashes that these two sides get into, regardless of the Anzac Day ones. It's always the second one where it's just like, what? These can't be the same two sides that went off against each other on Anzac Day several months prior. But nevertheless, that is exactly what we have got right here. Now the Dragons, they'll be looking for a response after that narrow loss. Oh, not really narrow. They got cleaned up by the Broncos. So they'll be looking for a big response to try and stay in touch with the top 8, especially with the Roosters and Manly not too far away from them on the ladder. 8th down to 10th will be a big deciding factor of who can get up first. And the only question remains, will Ben Hunt be able to steer them into the finals? Or is it just going to be another close miss for St. George Illawarra? Well, it's prediction time right here. Mark's survey says both teams are a bit hot and cold at the moment, so it can go either way. But he thinks the Roosters will win it by 12 points. So he's calling it a Roosters win 7 points to 12. Well, he has no confidence whatsoever. Even I have more confidence in Canterbury in losing to a genuine side than St. George Illawarra. And of course, his favourite referee, Ash Klein, will be the senior man in the bunker for this game. So I'm pretty sure he's going to love that one as well. Expect a couple of bunker calls and some brown paper bags from Uncle Dick. What was I saying? Oh yes, my final prediction. Something's got to click for the Roosters. And I reckon this will be the moment. Return of JWH, Tedesco, Tupou, Crichton, all back up from Origin, and Sam Walker puts on a clinic to get the Roosters home narrowly. I say the Roosters win 1-6. Now, the Manly Sea Eagles playing host to the Newcastle Knights at the Four Pines Park in Brookvale. Of course, same logic with Adam O'Brien's side. Ponga, Jacob Saifiti, and Dane Gagai, all named to back up after the third Origin. Bradman Best ruled out through injury after owing his thumb. So Anare Tuwala will start in the centres in his place, whilst Tex Hoy has dropped out of the side altogether. As for Manly, same 17 as before that got the job done against Melbourne. And Josh Allier named as the 18th man, though I would suspect he could get a late call-up depending. Now, the Newcastle Knights going down 40 points to 28 against the Rabbitohs. Well, talk about having this one in the bag and jumping out. Something happened down in Newcastle. They jump out to a 16-6 lead, look absolutely on song, looking for a big scalp over a top 8 hopeful. And then the Rabbitohs, from nowhere, go from 0 to 100 in the space of one intercept. It tries to Clemmer and Dominic Young put the Knights in front. Then Bradman Best, on his return, scores a third try. So they're in a healthy position at 16-6. But then Cody Walker just kickstarts them into action. From the half an hour mark, it's a half an hour domination either side of half time that the Knights just don't recover from. And Cody Walker led the way right here. 2 tries, 3 try assists, 95 run meters, 1 tackle break, 1 line break. From kicks to Richie Kennar, who scored a hat-trick, mind you, in place of Alex Johnston. And then the intercept try that really turned the game in the Rabbitohs' favour. Their right edge looked like they were off the pace early, as well as a beautiful ball from Dom Young, condensed the left side with no hope in hell. But once Walker started taking control, with Latrell Mitchell out the back, South Sydney just put the foot down to the ground and Newcastle into the dirt. It's just unbelievable to see that turnaround happen that fast. And there was just nothing in it for the Knights at the back end. Now, David Clemmer got sent off. That's right, not binned. He was off. Just straight off. Oh, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Why would you just send him off when the siren had already sounded? Now, of course, not the first time a player had been sent off as the full-time siren has sounded in the background, but not good. And it's just a reflection of where Adam O'Brien's side is at the moment. Where they were in a winnable position, only to have it turned upside down and not to recover from that point. They just weren't. They didn't recover after the Bunnies got the roll on. Not good enough. They had the lead and they choked it. And of course, Latrell Mitchell, some would argue he got rather lucky not to be disciplined as well. Right there, but so far, I would say he has made a difference to this Rabbitohs lineup as we speak, and we'll talk more about the Bunnies in a sec. Now, getting back to here, well, this is just a clear decision right here. After the Knights' poor performance against South Sydney, Manly with a week's break under their belt, and of course, all Origin stars expected to back up for this one. It's just going to go one way. A Manly, having found a resurgence, to say the least, East and Mark and I can both agree that Manly will be too good for Newcastle and walk away. He's saying by 28. I would also say with him, the Manly Sea Eagles win 13 points plus. It is going to be an absolute demolition job. And the final game on Saturday sees the Gold Coast Titans up against the Brisbane Broncos. Of course, the Broncos, like most other sides, have named Origin players in reserves and rested them as well. Of course, Corey Oates, Pat Carrigan in the reserves and could come into the squad later in the week, while Selwyn Cobbo and Kurt Capewell to be rested. Corey Pakes to be ruled out through concussion, so Jake Turpin will come up onto the bench, whilst Tom Flegler will also be back on the bench, whilst Payne Haas is still to be missing at least another week. Other than that, at the Broncos, unchanged from on the side, roughly unchanged from the side that had got the job done over St. George Illawarra. As for the Titans, and Justin Holbrook bringing in the changes here. So Sepho Fafita will get his start in first grade on the wing, pushing Philip Sami into the set. Enters Big Tino Fasua Malawi will start at lock forward, expected of course to back up from State of Origin. David Fafita will start in the second row, pushing, I believe, Sam McIntyre, who will go back to 18th man. Kevin Proctor in the reserves, as well as Jermaine Asako, with Corey Thompson also named to start, and Tana Boyd still at 5'8", AJ Brimson at fullback, with Jaden Campbell ruled out still with a hamstring injury, and of course there is still no Jared Wallace. Well, we've already talked about how well the Broncos performed against St. George Illawarra. And the Titans are really at rock bottom at the moment, with only one Origin star expected here. I don't see any realistic path for the Titans to get a victory in this one. It was an absolute shocking display from them. They should not be running last, to say the least. But alas, they are. But the Broncos, it's going to be Big Brother getting the win here. There is no two easy ways about it. As Mark has put down, it's an easy option, this one, unlike a year or two ago. But the Broncos, he says, are going to win by 40. So he's calling it a Broncos 13-plus victory. I will say it's also going to be a big Broncos 13-plus victory there. Now, the stars expected to be rested by Ivan Cleary for this game. And so, no Coruscant, To'o, Yo, Luai, Martin Cleary, or Stephen Crichton in for this one. So, Robert Jennings and Charlie Staines will form a new right centre wing pairing right there. Kurt Falls and Sean O'Sullivan will play in the heart. As Falls getting his second call-up to first grade. Chris Smith and Matt Eisenhuth completing the second row right there. As well as Sony Luke, Scott Sorensen, Spencer Lenu, and Jamin Salmon all making up the interchange. As for the West Tigers, they have also rung in changes. No Stefano Utoikamanu or Jacob Little. Also, New Brown maintains his play in the starting side. James Tarmo returns on the interchange, as well as Luke Garner named on the bench. Jake Simpkin there. Jackson Hastings named at lock forward, with Adam Dewey shifting to 5'8", Luke Brooks at half back, and of course the return of Ken Mamalo and Joe Offahen-Gowie moving into the front row. Also, Justin Matamua will be in the starting side, with Fanua Paul and Luke Garner due to the bench. Well, this is rather interesting, the changes the West Tigers have made. Hastings to lock forward. Jeez, I say, Brett Kamali's getting desperate. Of course, it was always going to be interesting to see what would happen, but somehow Luke Brooks is the golden child, that he cannot be touched whatsoever. and I'll just mention as quickly for the Panthers, as my mind tends to wander when I read these things out. How is it Luke Brooks, the so-called member of the Big Four, the one that has somehow dodged getting dropped, still has his place in the halves, even though he was playing half decent at 5'8"? How is it that Jackson Hastings, who has been the club's best, moved to the middle rather than stay at halfback, Dewey at 5'8", and Brooks to the bench? How in the bloody hell does that work? I don't know. I don't know how that works. I'm not inside Kamali's mind, and I'm not on his coaching staff. And of course, the Tigers, all speculation according to Fox Sports, supported by Channel 7's chief league correspondent, Michelle Bishop, that Tim Sheens will be named West Tigers head coach from 2023. So let me get this straight. You get the Tigers' most successful head coach, who got them to the Premiership in 2005, who failed to get them to the grand final after that. Mediocre results throughout the late 2000s. 2 okay years heading into the early 2010s. And of course, that one time in 2011. Gets sacked the following year. And now, 10 years later, having not coached for the last 3 years, because of course, also he went overseas. His last posting was at Hull KR, where he got sacked partway through 2019. And you're now asking him to take charge after 3 years out of the game over a Tigers side that could be facing the wooden spoon. Honestly, I just have to say, good luck, because you're going to need it. Now, it's true, the Panthers resting all their origin stars, like last year, it could backfire against them. But the way they're playing at the moment, I highly doubt it will backfire against them at this point in time. And of course, Mark shares my sentiments with this one. Few surprise changes for the Tigers and no origin players. They might have a chance, but Penrith will still be too good. He reckons the Panthers to win by 34 and the Panthers run home 13 plus. Panthers run home easily. 13 plus. It's a no-brainer. Even with all the origin stars missing, these guys stepping up, they'll just be in it for the win. Now, what I intended to say first off of the Sunday games, the Melbourne Storm at home against the Canberra Raiders. Of course, was the questions around Josh Papali'i and Jack Whiten. Of course, Whiten will be expected to play. James Schiller, the other change with no chance, Nickel Cookstad. And of course, as I said, they'll be monitoring Papali'i if he manages to back up through Origin free or not. As for the Melbourne Storm, Cam Munster will be back on the park, so Nick Meaney will shift to the wing. Harry Grant will back up after playing for Queensland. Felice Kafusi will be back in the second row after spending some personal leave off in the United States. Chris Lewis dropping back to the reserves, and of course Kenny Bromwich expected to play after suffering an ankle injury. A lot riding here for the Melbourne Storm. Not a very good performance, but confidence is they are back at home. And of course, the Canberra Raiders have not fared very well in 2022 against any of the top opposition in this year. Yeah, now Mark says they were unlucky last time out to lose to the Dragons, but Melbourne will be looking for a major response, and I think this is sort of the catalyst that we're going to see right here. Yeah, Mark says the Storm to win by 32, calling it a Melbourne 13-plus victory. I think you will see a response from the Melbourne Storm. Cam Munster might not be 100% fit for this one, but he's definitely going to give Melbourne a point of difference over the Green Machine. I think they win this 7 points to 12. I think it'll be a lot closer game. but I don't think the Raiders will be able to match them in front of a home crowd. So I reckon the Melbourne Storm to win as well. And finally, final game of round 18, the Canterbury Bulldogs up against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. As of course, Alex Johnston and Mark Nichols back in the side, so Richie Kenner and Cody Nikorima drop out and return to the interchange respectively. Damien Cook and Cam Murray will be named in the side to back up. So Saliva Havili and Jed Cartwright go back to the bench, as well as debutant Daniel Saluka Fafita and Shaq Mitchell also drop back to the reserves. As for the Dogs, Matt Burton will still start. At 5'8", expected to be backing up after Origin 3. Tavita Pangai, Jr. will start in the side at lock forward, with Corey Waddell pushing Raymond Vitala Mariner back to the interchange. Max King will shift to the front row, with Braden Burns named to return for the first time since round 6. So Dec Casey also gets pushed back to the reserves. Of course, we saw how well the Rabbitohs played against the Knights, but I gotta say, I actually have to give the Canterbury Bulldogs a little bit of a sniff. Not much, but there is a sniff. Pangai Jr. back in the side allows the Bulldogs to play with that sort of mongrel that unsettles the best of forward packs. And when you got two hotheads, Pangai Jr., Latrell Mitchell, this could really get interesting. I genuinely think it can. Now, of course, we saw what happened to the Knights, but we're not the Newcastle Knights. And, of course, we got cleaned up by Cronulla in wet conditions, but I reckon we're going to have a bit of a sneaky bounce back. Because the Rabbitohs are perfectly invulnerable to us. They've had a couple of shock losses against us. I reckon we're in with a chance. As Mark said, he would have said South Sydney by a country mile in this game, but the Bulldogs have been better as of late. He says it'll be closer, but he still thinks the Rabbitohs will get the upper hand by 26, so he's calling it a Rabbitohs 13+. You know what? We were locked at 6-all with the Sharks in unideal weather conditions. I reckon we can stick it to the Bunnies this time around. I reckon with Pangai Jr. back, we're going to unsettle their forward pack, and we're going to play some very expansive football with Matt Burton and the Fox tearing up the Bunnies' right-hand side as well. Oh, there's going to be some stiff competition, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to have faith in my colours for a change. I reckon the Bulldogs win this 7 points to 12. And on that note, that is full time with the NRL debrief right here. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back tomorrow with the Betfred Super League debrief for round 19. Can Toulouse overtake Wakefield Trinity? Will the Warrington Wolves get their season back on track? And who can chase down St. Helens for the League Leaders Shield? All those questions answered tomorrow. Oh, we'll see you then.